Well, A Great Day in Harlem is actually the photo shoot that was done with all the great jazz musicians in New York back in 1958. It was a wonderful day, and many of the musicians who are on that photo are my heroes. Some of them I've actually gotten to meet and to work with, so very special. It's just a snapshot of a great moment in jazz history and coming together of the great jazz musicians in America.
So I would hang out at jazz bars and photograph. That's how I started, actually photographing famous jazz musicians at the jazz bars in Los Angeles when I went to school. You know, it's a time and space and a time where the greats were all around. You know, you got all the amazing, legendary musicians all sitting around in Harlem in front of a brownstone. And coincidentally, my teacher was the one that photographed it, the photographer called Art Kane. So he was one of the teachers, professors at my school I went to. So that was quite a big coincidence.
So the first time I saw the photo, A Great Day in Harlem, was when I was 13 years old. And I was studying the history of the music, and I chanced upon that photo. Yeah, and I remember it being a very cool moment where I was like, whoa, you know, Sonny Rollins is in the photo, Benny Golson is in the photo, and Count Basie and so many of the greats. Dizzy Gillespie was in the photo too. And I was like, whoa, this is a cool photo. Yeah.
It's wonderful to have the whole range of jazz musicians as well as aficionados and jazz lovers and supporters all together in one family photo. We have the very young musicians, the Jazz Links, to the young established musicians like Sean Hongwei, who has flown back all the way from New York to be part of this photo. The middle-aged musicians like Chok Kurong, who's our Associate Music Director at Jazz Association Singapore, as well as our very established musicians like the godfather of jazz, Luis Soliano, who's a Cultural Medallion recipient and also received the Public Service Medal from the government this year. So this whole range of musicians, plus the supporters and stakeholders of the scene, are all here together. So I'm so glad that we can do this photo. It's a true family photo of the jazz scene in Singapore.
Of course, like in this day and age, like who were the jazz musicians around, you know, the young ones, the older ones, the luminaries, people involved in it. And I think it's always nice to not take it for granted, you know, that everyone's around. You're going to be around like in 5-10 years from now. So again, as a photographer, I think it's important to archive it, to document it, and to just have everyone in one location. Because it's not easy to get 160, 180 people around, you know, coming to on one evening to do a photo shoot.
This is the first time we're having this. And the man responsible is actually Jeremy Monteiro for what, you know, to organize such a big event like this. Getting all the musicians, which is the hardest thing to do in Singapore. And he has managed to get all of us here.
Well, we wanted to look for a place that's quite iconic, that everyone can identify with. Singaporeans have walked through and seen this place. Here, the former City Hall, and now the National Gallery.
Long before my father's time, back in the 30s. But it was a small community. Musicians were scarce. And eventually, through the years, it grew up and things became much, much better. We grow according to times, you know. So now, this is 2024, 60, 70 years. Times have changed, like Singapore has changed into a modern city. So musicians do change. We have great musicians performing all around the world.
Well, you know, I have said before, although we've had great jazz musicians all the way from right after the war in 1950 all the way to now, that there are more high-level, international-level jazz musicians in Singapore now than there has ever been in our history. So the fact that we are at a really very important crossroads and a situation where we have all these great musicians and practitioners and jazz lovers in Singapore is why we wanted to come together and do it here.
I think it's also very important for Singapore to have a good jazz environment, because all major cities are not cities without one or two good jazz clubs. In most cities that have jazz, it's always the same. It's a niche art form, but it makes the city vibrant.
I think it's a great snapshot of the current time and the people in the scene right now. And you know, I feel that in the next 20, 30 years, when younger cats look back at this photo, they will see, you know, their mentors and their mentors' mentors, and it will be a nice photo, you know, for the future. Yeah.
And like for me, I mean, like I say, I'm also a huge historian, being a photographer. in a way, we're historians, and we don't take it for granted that all these greats were in that one spot at that one time, and to document it, to archive it, so the future generations are able to enjoy it.
It's an environment where musicians have not an easy time to make a living, and therefore we need to support it. It's just like we need to support our orchestra, because market is very small and the cost of maintaining the orchestra is very high. So the community have to support it. Same thing with jazz.
For me, it's a great day.